Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're talking about a little piece of history. The Harrington and Richardson Victor. In this case, chambered for .22 rimfire short. The Victor, as a model, seems to have run parallel to the Young American, which was introduced in 1884. And it is a conventional double-action revolver with gate loading, so the cylinder does not swing out. And they were small, they were inexpensive, they were kind of an everyman's gun. And they're pretty common. They made 1.5 million of them between 1884 and 1941. I don't know how many Victors they made. There are some differences. The H&R Young American has an octagonal barrel and a fluted cylinder. The Victor has a round barrel and an unfluted cylinder. Might lead you to believe that it was the cheaper of the two. Maybe it is, I don't know. It's remarkably difficult to find information on Harrington and Richardson online, and the authoritative work on the subject is $150, which might exceed my interest as a occasional hobby item. So this is a small gun, so let's go straight to the tabletop and have a closer look. The H&R Victor .22 rimfire is a very small gun, being merely 5 inches long and 3 3/8 inches tall. So this would have been very much a pocket sort of gun, and very concealable. And they were quite inexpensive. I've seen the Young American version in catalogs from about 1910 going for the princely sum of $1.50. And if this were the cheaper version, it would be somewhat less than that. This example is in really time warp condition, and it does not appear to have been refinished. And who would? They're not a highly collectible or high-quality gun. One of the reasons, in fact, that it's very hard to find information about H&R online is that the book is $150, and for the most part, nobody cares. You can see the gutta percha, or perhaps vulcanite grips. Pretty elaborate, but it was pretty cheap to manufacture these grips. The gun is nickel-plated. It does have a decently crowned barrel, and it has no rear sight whatsoever, which doesn't mean you can't shoot it with surprising accuracy at close range. But it's a learned skill. The gun is single or double action, and we're not going to allow the hammer to fall because it's a rimfire. But the double action pull is heavy, very heavy, but really surprisingly manageable. Now, to unload and show clear, which I should have done first, bring the hammer to the safety notch, and then look into the loading gate, which has no cover, and just rotate the cylinder until you're satisfied that there are no cartridges in the holes. To load is very simple. Put it in the safety notch, and just insert rounds through the loading gate. Thusly. However, the unloading procedure really makes this kind of moot, because to unload it, you have to press in this lever, remove the center pin, and then pop out the cylinder, and you use the center pin to eject the fired casings. So you might as well just load it as it is once it's out of the revolver, and then place it back in the revolver, which works fine. I've done it both ways. This is not a gun you were expected to load in the heat of the moment or while under fire. And the single action is, it's not awful. It's actually surprisingly crisp. And the double action, I had a Young American 22 short, and the double action trigger pull on that was awful. But this one, again, it's very heavy, but it's also quite short and quite smooth. I'm very favorably impressed with this gun. And as you can see, it's almost new in condition. On the top, it is marked Victor and 22 caliber RF for rimfire. The serial number is on the front of the grip frame. And on the bottom, it is stamped Harrington and Richardson and the city, which I can't read currently. But they sold a lot of these guns, and it was, you'd have to say they were popular, but they have no real historic significance. And so, as I said, there's been very little interest in them, and that limits the amount of information available. But it's a robust, workmanlike gun, and, really, it is what it is. It's in a pathetic caliber. It's tiny. It doesn't even have a rear sight. But, as a vest pocket defense against muggers, or as a get-off-me gun, obviously people found a use for it because they sold a bloody lot of them. Now, the Victor, like the Young American, was available in this size frame in 22 short, a somewhat larger frame in 32 rimfire, or 38 Smith & Wesson. And they served a lot of people for self-defense. Now, what's interesting is, in typical H&R fashion, the double-action trigger pulls back and releases the hammer. But if you go to single action, this is the actual single-action trigger, this little piece right here. So it actually has a separate trigger for single action. Not that you can use it. Now, when you're at the safety cock, the cylinder does free rotate. Because like a lot of guns of this era, basically, instead of having a key that goes into a slot and locks the cylinder, when you cock the gun, a projection of the hammer, basically a stop, engages here, and the hand actually pushes it firmly against that stop. And so, it really doesn't need to lock as such. And in practice, this is really not a problem, because, of course, when you fire the gun, you're not going to return it to the safety notch. And it's just going to, stay where it is, so the next shot will be indexed properly. So, interesting gun. A little bit of everyman Americana. And it's really neat. And again, I'm really impressed with the condition of this gun. Beautiful is not usually a term I would apply to any of Harrington Richardson's works, but this is genuinely a pretty little gun. Harrington and Richardson, from their inception in 1871 until their end of days in 1986, for over a century, they provided affordable, functional weapons for everyday people. No, they're not sexy like a Colt Python or a Korth revolver or a Holland and Holland double, but they're just as much a part of history, perhaps even more so, because when a poor working stiff felt the need to defend his family, or needed a simple, cheap, functional single-barrel shotgun to put food on the table, these are the companies they turned to: Harrington and Richardson, Ivor Johnson, a host of others. And it's time we start valuing their contributions, because they're part of it. And they're a bigger part of it than those elite, expensive guns ever were. So I think we need to give them some respect and give them their due. Anyway, if you liked the video, please hit like below. It really helps the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more, and if you feel really motivated to help, consider clicking the link below in the description and supporting me on Patreon. I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.